Member, Mr. Conyers of Michigan, for his opening statement for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, was the unanimous consent request?
Oh, without objection, Ms. Lofgren's unanimous consent request will be granted.
Thank you, Mr.
Hearing
Chairman.
none, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations again on your ascension to the chairmanship of this important committee. Members of the committee, I want you all to know that I welcome all of our witnesses and look forward to their testimony. And I'd just like to remind you, I don't frequently quote former President Reagan, but he once said, "Our nation is a nation of immigrants. More than any other country, our strength comes from our own immigrant heritage and our capacity to welcome those from other lands." That quote was uncontroversial among my Republican friends and colleagues then, and it should remain so now. Affirmation of the moral and social worth of immigrants is not a partisan position. It is simply American. As we begin today's hearing, I urge my colleagues to use this forum to examine sensible, effective measures rooted in fact and practice for enforcing our laws and keeping our communities safe. One fact we must consider is that studies have repeatedly shown that immigrants in the United States are less likely than native-born Americans to engage in crime. The vast majority of immigrants in the United States are peaceful, law-abiding individuals who support their families and communities. Another fact is that the southern border is more secure than ever. Apprehension rates at the southern border have plummeted since the 1980s, and apprehensions of Mexicans specifically have reached their lowest point in nearly half a century. This helps explain why most Americans don't want the Trump border wall, which would cost upwards of a staggering $20 billion to build and $750 million annually to maintain, it is estimated. Notwithstanding these facts and others, the current administration continues to vilify immigrants and attack the communities that have decided not to conscript their law enforcement into a mass deportation force. In fact, yesterday, Attorney General Sessions threatened to withhold federal funds from such jurisdictions. Let me be clear, Attorney General Sessions should not substitute his judgment for that of law enforcement in local jurisdictions who know what it is best to keep their communities safe. The Attorney General purports to place a high priority on fighting crime, but threatens to withhold much-needed Justice Department funding from the very agencies that are on the front line in protecting all of us. Over 600 counties and cities have made the decision to resist the administration's efforts to conscript their local officials into a mass deportation force because experience and data show that local enforcement of federal immigration law often makes communities less safe. It breeds profiling, discrimination, and distrust. Immigrant victims and witnesses stop reporting crimes to authorities, and criminals grow emboldened. In fact, studies have shown that these sanctuary cities are actually safer and more prosperous than their non-sanctuary counterparts. Finally, under the guise of enforcing the law, we've already witnessed Donald Trump and his administration follow through on divisive campaign rhetoric with actions that threaten our core American values and will do nothing to make us safer. To cite a few examples, in less than 90 days, this administration has already threatened an unconstitutional use of federal spending authority to strong-arm local jurisdictions into enforcing federal immigration law. Two more points: undermined the Fourth Amendment by pressuring cities into detaining immigrants without probable cause. And finally, has conducted indiscriminate raids on peaceful immigrant families in their homes, places of work, and even in their schools. Such anti-immigrant measures not only raise serious constitutional concerns, but they're contrary to our proud history as a nation of immigrants. I thank the chairman, welcome again the witnesses for their testimony today, and
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Let me begin by making a statement. The whole issue of sanctuary cities is something that is very disturbing because it is an attempt by those jurisdictions to nullify federal law and to say that federal law does not apply in the sanctuary city. Now, this country suffered probably the worst trauma in its history when certain states over 150 years ago decided that they had the power to nullify federal law. And there were over 500,000 people that were killed during the Civil War. And I think that the horror of that has been forgotten. Secondly, I'm very disturbed by saying that there are certain types of federal laws that state and local law enforcement do not enforce. I guess I can say that robbing a bank is a federal offense, and I don't think that state and local law enforcement wait for the FBI to come to respond to the bank and try to catch the people who are committing a federal felony in the process of trying to clean out the bank's till. Now, having said that statement, let me ask you, Ms. Vaughn, under current immigration law, drunk driving is typically not a removable offense, and neither is most gang activities. Would you favor a change to make those offenses removable so that it is very clear that gang activity and being convicted of a DUI would be a removable offense?
Absolutely. Of course, anyone who's in the country illegally is potentially subject to deportation, whether they've been driving drunk or not. But I do think that immigration officers and agents need better tools within the INA to make it easier to accelerate the removal of those individuals and to protect the communities.
I know that in my district there's been at least one real major tragedy where a van of families going to church ended up being hit by a drunk driver, and some, but not all of them, were killed, which was a family tragedy that could have been prevented. How about gang activity? We have a lot of people who have been claiming that they're fleeing groups like MS-13 as they arrive at the border. Do any of the witnesses know if there are any people who have made such a claim for asylum that have ended up rejoining MS-13 once they get across the border?
From what I understand and have been told by some local law enforcement agencies, there have been instances, but they've learned from gang members who are now incarcerated, that of course not all of the youths who've been crossing illegally from Central America are involved with gangs, but the gangs here know that the policy is so lenient that if someone who's a minor makes it to our border, that they will be allowed to resettle in the country with very few questions asked. So they have deliberately taken advantage of that policy and used it in order to boost their ranks of cliques here in the United States in order to benefit the gang as a whole. So that is definitely happening.
Thank you. My time is running out. Ms. Piatti, in your written testimony, page 1, you say that your center advocates for laws and policies that help immigrant survivors of violence, including sexual and domestic violence. Do you advocate for victims such as the Rockville teen?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay, that's good to know. How do you do that?
How do we do that? So when we do have offices in a number of countries, a number of cities around the country, 4 different cities, we're opening a 5th. Our work is to meet with victims, understand their situation, hear their stories, know if they have are eligible for any form of immigration remedy in this country, interview them extensively to find out if they in fact have a credible claim and one that might survive under the law. And if so, then offer them free legal assistance in order to be able to enter their claim into the adjudication system.
Okay, and so you don't do, any of the type of counseling that is needed by anyone who is a victim of a sexual assault. You turn that over to somebody else?
We do. Our center offers holistic services, so we have both social workers and lawyers on our staff, and we would definitely offer that kind of counsel to somebody who came to us.
Okay. So you aren't proactive in seeking out and offering those types of services. The victim and the victim's family have to come to you rather than you going to them?
We conduct outreach in the community to be sure that individuals know that we are there, where our offices are, what kinds of services we provide, and to make sure that folks know they can come to us. The majority of the people who seek our services have heard about us through word of mouth.